Oh, okay, thank you. And today it's on realizing peace by faith. And actually, this is based on Reverend Matsunobu's lecture in August of 1994, how we bring about peace by faith. And actually, I remember I was just starting in Gardena at that time, and he came to Los Angeles, and actually was lecturing at the Airport Hilton, the LAX Airport Hilton. I can still picture him coming in that day, and so this is the lecture he gave. And realizing peace by faith, he began by saying, this is not just international peace, but also domestic peace, and also for each of us, peace of mind. So he was broadening the whole way of looking at it. And actually, this was kind of a preparatory lecture because it was in the next year, October 1995, that they began the International Peace by Faith movement. And so the International Peace by Faith movement was sort of updating from Reverend Matsunobu's perspective the original Humanity Enlightenment movement, which our founder, Reverend Masahara Taniguchi, proclaimed in that very first magazine of March 1930. And the idea behind the Humanity Enlightenment movement was that if people came to realize the truth as we teach in Seicho-No-Ie, then peace would come to their mind, and if they shared it with another, peace would come to their mind. And the way to bring peace to the world was one by one, people becoming more and more enlightened to understanding the wonderful truth of Seicho-No-Ie and really the essence of all religions, because that's one of the three pillars of Seicho-No-Ie. Of course, the first is we're all children of God. The second is that the world is a reflection of our mind. And the third is that all religions emanate from the same universal source. And this is a wonderful aspect of Seicho-No-Ie. And the reason is that our founder thought that the essence of religion is really beyond words. It's that connection with the infinite. And as soon as you put something into words, it's an explanation. So all the doctrines and so forth, every religion will differ, but the explanations are for the people, place, and circumstances, and the language and customs where that particular founder began the religion. But when you pray to the divinity within, which is within each of us as a child of God, you're connecting to the one universal divine source that is there in all religions. And this is the wonderful understanding of our founder, looking at the essence of religion, which goes beyond words. And if all religions had that kind of viewpoint, it would be very easy to work together. And so the hope was that the Seicho-No-Ie teachings will become widespread enough that that sort of understanding will spread more and more. And actually, recently I'm seeing more and more the distinction between phenomenal and true image. Of course, they use different words, but the everyday world and generally they're using consciousness as before everything was consciousness, is the theme for while reading recently Meta Huma by Deepak Chopra. And the intelligence of the universe was there before the Big Bang. And that intelligence is within each and every one of us. And we call it the true image in Seicho-No-Ie, but the word that's used more often nowadays for people coming from trying to bring science and religion more closely together, recognize that when science realizes that consciousness is the essence of all life, and it's not an epiphenomena of the brain, then there'll be a tremendous transformation. And it'll come very much closer to the Seicho-No-Ie teachings. But that's so the essence of that realizing peace by faith is that bringing that understanding to the world. And let me share with you here. Let me see how this one works, okay? And realizing peace by faith. Let's put the theme for this. And I mentioned here that based on how we bring about peace by faith by our current president, Reverend Masanobu Taniguchi. At that time, he was still the vice president, but this was bringing in some of his ideas into the Seicho-No-Ie movement. And here, this is a latter part of the lecture, but really the essence of what he was getting to. The first part was all about the difficulty in, here he's calling it dissonance, religious dissonance, but the difficulty for religions to explain good and evil. And if you're restricted to the phenomenal world, it's very difficult to explain good and evil. And Seicho-No-Ie has a very, very sharp delineation by making God's world as the perfect true image world and phenomena, the creation of human beings. So the understanding of many religions is that all of these measures, there's the premise that only this world that we human beings recognize truly exists in such a condition was created by God. So many people have that understanding, the Garden of Eden and all of that this phenomenal world is our world. And this is the big distinction that we make in Seicho-No-Ie. Because however Seicho-No-Ie objects to this premise, we believe that the world which we recognize through our physical body is a shadow or reflection of our mind and not the real existence that is created by God. And one of the, in this lecture also, but one of the really gifts of Seicho-No-Ie is the interpretation that our founder, Reverend Masaharu Taniguchi, gives to the Bible. And one of the things I learned was he looked at Genesis, which of course every Christian is familiar, let there be light, and there was light, divide the land from the waters and so forth. And it says in there that God made man in his own image, male and female he made. And in chapter 31 it says, and God saw everything that he made and it was very good. And our founder explained that this is the creation of the true image world. And in the second chapter of Genesis, right in the beginning, a great mist comes up. And it's in the second chapter where takes the dust of the ground and creates Adam and so forth. But this is the phenomenon. So this is one way of distinguishing between true image and phenomena. And when we realize that the world God made everything perfectly and made man in his image, male and female, he made in his image. And that's the true image that we speak about in Seicho-No-Ie and the child of God within. And so he goes on, we believe that by means of the organs of the physical body, we not only recognize the outside world distortedly, but also at the subconscious level, we bend this world several times. And from the fragmented information received through this screening process, we create a world of temporary creation, a recreation according to our desires, and we dwell within this world. And here he's making that explanation of the world, including our body, is a reflection of the mind. And the mind is not an epiphenomena of the brain, but the mind is what exists before the body. And the whole outline of the body is from the mind understanding. And actually, in Korean photography, they can show that. Because if you have someone who's had, for example, their hand amputated, and you put it under Korean photography, it'll show the outline of the missing hand. So you see, in a sense, the spiritual outline of the hand, even though the physical hand is no longer there. And that's the pattern in which all the cells follow to get to the right place to make a physical body, is that spiritual outline that is there first. So thinking this way, you come to know that what causes good and evil to appear to exist in this world. So here is making very clear distinction. It's not existing, but it's appearing to exist. It's not God who created this world, but man's imperfect way of looking at things. And we're realizing more and more, and even Reverend Matsunobu includes that in some of the prayers, in his daily prayers, that what we're really experiencing is all of the world are vibrations of energy. And we take certain energy that's a certain wavelength, and we turn it into sound, and another wavelength, we turn it into visual objects. And some we can't see. We can see infrared or with scientific instruments, but we can't see it with our own senses. So what we're doing is taking certain bands of energy and converting it into what we experience as our world is really an interpretation that our mind creates from those vibrations. So everyone has really a unique perspective because everyone's creating the world that they see from the vibrations that are around us into their sort of virtual reality. So it's a kind of virtual reality that we're living in, that we've created in our own mind. So everyone has a distinct perspective on how they see that world out there. So in other words, in the world that is created by God, evil does not exist. But through the imperfection of the senses of our physical body and the cloudiness of our mind, it appears that evil exists in addition to good in the world that extends before us. So this is the distinction that Seicho-No-Ie is making between good and evil. So evil is a creation of human beings. So this world is not the one which truly exists. It's a world which appears as if it really exists. Therefore, Seicho-No-Ie calls this world the phenomenal world and clearly distinguishes it from the true image world, which is created by God. So I think you're all very familiar with that. But he was talking to many new people, so he was being very careful in how he was presenting it. But this is almost unique in Seicho-No-Ie, is that distinction between the true image and phenomena. And it clarifies so many things, and so that we're able to understand it more fully. And so in order to achieve this, we should apply the following three measures. Do not recognize the evil that stands before you as a true existence. So the evil that we see is an appearance. It's like a dream in a sense. It's a creation that we're seeing with our mind. And two, reflect upon our own mind, searching for the causes of the cloudiness of our mind. And so as our founder so often puts it, when we have embroiled in an unfortunate situation, he's always recommending reflect upon yourself. Because the way you may be seeing it at first is not really the best way to see it. And if you really reflect upon yourself and see, well, why is it this way? And you can perhaps look at it a bit different way. Of course, if we're following the divine message of grand harmony, even something that's difficult for us, we should, oh, thank you very much. We should be grateful. And it's not easy to be grateful to something that's a difficulty. But if we go to that extent, we're able to realize the lesson that that is meant to give us. So this is a way of interacting with the world. And so Seicho-No-Ie has a very unique way of interacting with the world, and recognize that what we may see as evil at first may not be truly evil. And if we reflect on our mind, we may be able to see it in a different way. And recognize that the mind at the depths of our consciousness is not the cause of the problems, but it directs us to correct them. And here he's talking, the mind at the depths of our consciousness is the true image. So we have only goodness within us. And it's very interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with kinesiology, but that's muscle testing. And you know when something is true and when something is false. The subconscious mind knows, even though your conscious mind may not. So if you say something like, I'm a child of God, your arm will be strong. If you say something, I'm a sinner, it'll be weak. Because anything that's false turns out to be weak in kinesiology. And that's because the subconscious mind knows what is true and what is false, even when the conscious mind doesn't. The deep within our subconscious mind, we know. They've even done tests where they'll put something like a vitamin in an envelope and not showing it to the person. And if he holds it against his stomach, his arm will be strong. If they put something like an aspirin, his arm will be weak, even though he doesn't know what's in the. So we have a sense of the world beyond our conscious awareness. And so he goes on to say, when we can distance ourselves from evil phenomena, it's easier for us to see that we recognize such evil to be evil because we are standing on the side of light. Yes, we are standing on the side of light. Applaud. But this is where the reason we recognize evil is because we're coming from a good side, and this is that's because of our elevated understanding of the world. So that is to say, we can recognize all have a common, wonderful consciousness deep within our mind that can determine darkness as darkness and a mistake as a mistake. So in essence, everyone, even people who are gone off in the wrong direction, their essential nature is truth, even though they may have too much delusion that they're not able to really contact it with their conscious mind. But in essence, everyone has a goodness within, and they'll experience that in certain situations. And so he goes on to say, when we practice these three, namely, first, do not recognize the evil of another, and two, reflect upon our own mind, and three, recognize ourselves as others to be, in essence, children of God. And so this is his pathway for realizing peace by faith, is recognizing evil is an appearance, it's not a true existence. And when we are confronted with something we feel as evil, we need to reflect upon ourselves, and are we seeing this in the right way? And also recognize that everyone is in essence a child of God. These are the three essential points. So through these methods, we shall remove the cloudiness of our mind, and we, as well as others, shall project on the screen of this world the shining essence as children of God. So this is the three tests. How can we realize good? And now I would now like to pursue how we can concretely manifest good in our daily lives by showing how these three steps correspond to the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament. And here it's a very famous passage from John chapter 8, verses 1 to 11. I think you're probably familiar with this. And here I'll just quote from the Bible. Jesus went on to the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And while he was teaching him, then the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest you? So this is sort of a trap that the Pharisees and scribes are putting before Jesus, and they want to see what he'll say. This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. Because if you were to say that you don't need to stone her or forgive her, that would be going against the Moses law. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So he kind of ignored that at first, and he just went into a kind of meditation. So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted himself up and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those 9 accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So this is the Bible's essence. And then our Reverend Masanobu's goes on to explain, touching story, don't you think? And in his book, Shinjitsu wo Motomite, Searching for the Truth, Reverend Seicho Taniguchi, and he was president of the Seicho-No-Ie at that time, praises this passage saying, I believe this story is the most excellent and profound passage of the Bible. And I was familiar with that from my days in the Christian church, but I didn't have that same opinion, and partly because I didn't really understand the full essence of what that story was teaching. And here he explains it. I was just sort of taking it as it was given, but here they're actually analyzing it from the Seicho-No-Ie point of view. So this story contains the 3 steps mentioned earlier to manifest our essence as children of God. To begin with, Jesus did not recognize the woman who committed adultery to be in essence a sinner. This is because Jesus said, Go and sin no more. And this is the explanation Reverend Seicho gave. He said, if Jesus thought that this woman was a sinner, and was in essence a sinner, to tell her go and sin no more would be committing the same foolishness as telling a frog to never enter the water again. So he was seeing her as have completely repented from her past actions. And so this woman who was caught in the act of adultery did, of course, actually entertain at the time the mind of adultery and actually committed adultery. In addition, at another time, this woman may have given rise to a mind of theft or a mind of hatred or a mind of covetousness, excessive desire, and actually committed such sins. Jesus, however, knew the mind that changes through time and place is not the man's true mind. So he was seeing her true image, that in truth, she was a perfect child of God. And this was a delusion that she had been caught up in. Jesus knew that deep within man's mind there dwells the divine nature, which may also be called conscience. Therefore, even there was an adulteress before him, and those who would judge her, he called directly upon the true mind, which dwells in them all. So here he was seeing, not seeing the evil appearance, but seeing the perfection of her true self, the child of God within. And this is expressed in his words to the adulteress. Neither do I condemn thee. The you which Jesus called upon by his words, neither do I condemn thee, was the woman's true mind, which knew that adultery was wrong and knew that it would bring shame to her and repented. So here he was looking at her true self and really calling forth her true self in his mind. In addition to those who would stone this woman, Jesus said, "He that without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her," and appealed to them to hear the voice of conscience and reflect upon themselves. And our founder, Reverend Matsunobu Taniguchi, also talks about this in the commentary on the Gospel of St. John. And it's kind of interesting what he mentions, because where Jesus goes down to right on the ground, he's seeing that as a kind of meditation. So Jesus is picturing in his mind all of these people, the woman and all of the accusers are all wonderful, perfect children of God. And in this kind of circumstance, what's most important is to bring calmness and harmony to the situation. And so he was looking at each of those as wonderful, perfect children of God, and going beyond the phenomenal conflict between the woman who had been involved in adultery and the accusers who were wanting to stone her. And after he went down, they were saying, "Well, what are you going to do?" And he came up and said, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." And then he again looked down and wasn't saying anything, but he was kind of meditating. Our founder even mentioned maybe something like Shinsokan meditation, but seeing that perfect true image. And of course, Jesus was at a very high level. And so when he was meditating, that divine mind was permeating to that everyone in that whole situation. And so he was really connecting to the child of God within each and every one of those people. And since Jesus taught the woman, "Go and sin no more," he recognized the woman's acts to be evil. However, that Jesus forgave this woman means that he did not forgive her evil, but recognized her essence as not being evil, and with love he called forth her essence, which was good. So in other words, he's looking beyond the evil appearance to the goodness within that woman as a child of God, and calling forth that goodness, not only in her, but really calling forth the goodness in all of the accusers. And one by one, they recognized that there was a case where they had sinned at some point, and so they were not going to be the one to cast the first stone. And so here, Reverend Matsunobu goes on, here's the fundamental meaning of forgiveness. Unlike the method that judges the evil committed by another through argument, here Jesus is teaching a fundamental method to manifest good. Your method to realize peace. So in Seicho-No-Ie, we teach, do not recognize enemies in our environment, or do not recognize the evil of another. In Seicho-No-Ie, we do not believe that peace can be realized by recognizing evil in the physical world and then destroying it. And so we see this. One of the examples that I take is that, in World War I, at the end of the war, in the peace arrangements, they put a great bill of reparations on Germany. And Germany was the aggressor, and he had to pay the cost of the war to the allies on the other side. And actually what happened was that in Germany, there was a tremendous inflation. Actually, we have some complaints recently about egg prices, have doubled and tripled. But at that time in Germany, actually, you'd have to take a wheelbarrow of marks to buy a dozen eggs. The inflation was so out of control. And this led really to Adolf Hitler becoming in power and creating the Second World War. But after the Second World War, the United States had the Marshall Plan, and the intent was to rebuild all the countries of Europe and Asia and bring them back to prosperity. And actually, what happened is that Europe became European Union. So countries that had fought for thousands of years have come together as one unit, and Japan and Germany and Italy are all allies of the United States and get along very well now. So that responding to the needs of everyone after the war created a harmonious situation. And so we've had in the Middle East constant trying to eradicate the terrorists, but the more you eradicate the terrorists, more appear, because in the violence that it takes to eliminate the terrorists, more people are disenchanted and take up that cause. So this is the Seicho-No-Ie way is do not recognize enemies in our environment or do not recognize the evil of another. Seicho-No-Ie do not believe that peace can be realized by recognizing evil in the physical world and destroying it. So you can't, it keeps, the evil keeps spreading. Why? As I've explained to you in the earlier part of the lecture, our environment is a reflection or shadow of our mind. Even if we destroy the shadow of our mind but fail to correct the erroneous mind and the false mind, which are the causes of the shadow, this evil mind will be projected into our environment time and time again. So it's created reflecting upon ourselves and eliminating the cause that's created the evil. So in the process of destroying the environment, including human beings, when we recognize as enemies, an even greater number of evil minds will be sure to appear. And often the results of the conditions are even worse than before the destructive activities began. So to bring true peace to the world, we must learn from Jesus, who forgave the adulteress, who has recognized the conscious and divine nature which dwells within the minds of all people as their essence, and was called for this true mind with love. And so when we have, if there's a colleague at work that you're having some difficulty with, or even sometimes mothers have, a young child gets into kind of temper tantrum, and our founder, Reverend Masaharu Taniguchi, would recognize, go in another room and Shinsokan and maybe even do the prayer for reconciliation. And if your mind becomes at peace and loving and seeing that the goodness in that person, the child will calm down, or you'll find it becomes much easier to communicate with your colleagues. And so it's that reflecting on yourself and putting that mind of peace in your mind, and then it begins to affect those around you. So this is by no means a simple task. Even if murders, assaults, and wars appear before us as phenomena, we should say like Jesus with the adulteress before him, to the person or the group, neither do I condemn thee, to say such words, not simple theory, but faith and conviction are necessary. So this is the realizing peace by faith. So Seicho-No-Ie has a wonderful method to enhance and deepen this belief, and this is called the Shinsokan meditation. Literally translated as a meditation to envision God within ourselves. I regret that we do not have enough time today to explore this very wonderful method of spiritual refreshment. So you're all familiar with the Shinsokan meditation. And that's a way to bring peace to yourself and also you elevate your vibration and it becomes peaceful, people around you become more peaceful as well. And here he gives an example. And this is a testimony presented by Mrs. Marilyn Ebelthite at my Toronto lecture meeting in August 1992. Mrs. Ebelthite was born severely crippled and handicapped, including very poor eyesight, into a family which was full of carping criticism. And so it may have been the dedication ceremony at the new Toronto Seicho-No-Ie Center, which is a beautiful building. I've been there. I actually have one large window that has the International Peace by Faith symbol embossed in the glass. And actually it was a Toronto member who was the one who designed the winning International Peace by Faith design. But here, this is Mrs. Ebelthite. And here he's talking about, so she had grown up in a very difficult situation. Her mother was very hard on her. And so she never heard the word dear or darling for most of her life. She never knew love and was full of repressed age and hatred most of the time. And here Reverend Matsunobu said, anyone who knew her would be reminded of the joke. She was the most even-minded person I ever knew, mad all the time. So she was very upset with everyone and everything. And that's one reason she was having so many health issues. As a result, she developed constant and severe epileptic seizures, which continued until her late 40s. And also at the age of 62, her already poor eyesight worsened in June of 1986. This incident finally prompted her to read a book written by Reverend Masaharu Taniguchi and to go to the Seicho-No-Ie Church in Toronto. In retrospect, she states, so probably the greatest thing that Seicho-No-Ie did for me was get me to forgive my parents and ancestors by praying sincerely for their well-being and happiness at the service for ancestors. She says that it was exceedingly difficult for her to forgive others because she was conditioned to hate and blame them. And as she became grateful to her ancestors, he realized that her mother was so difficult with her because her mother's mother had been the same with her mother. And so her mother was carrying down this kind of tradition of that family and causing the very difficult situation. And so by little, she found that to honor and respect the ancestors was to clean away the rage and resentment that her mother had gotten from her mother and passed on to her. Her healing started by repeating, I'm a child of God, perfect and harmonious, in her meditation. And Mrs. Ebelthite, who in her own words had been exceedingly parsimonious, became generous not only materially, but also spiritually. She now practices Shinsokan meditations for the peoples of other countries. So she really likes the prayer for world peace. And to realize true forgiveness, she recommends for us to practice the following prayer taught by Reverend Masaharu Taniguchi. And this is actually the ending of the prayer for reconciliation. And I think you're familiar with that. You know, it's, I have forgiven you, you have forgiven me, you and I are one in God, I love you, you love me, you and I are one in God. I'm grateful to you, you're grateful to me, you and I are one in God. There's no longer the slightest ill feeling between you and me. I pray for your happiness from the bottom of my heart. So in the mind purification ceremony, we repeat that over and over. And after it's repeated over and over, and you're visualizing those people that you may have written about, and if you see them smiling, and at the end, there's this one, I have thoroughly forgiven these people. These people have come into my life in order to teach me how divine it is to forgive. Therefore, they are manifestations of the Bodhisattva who reflects the sounds of the world, who has come into my life to guide me in the way. I am grateful. This is really the final portion of the prayer for reconciliation. And so here, Reverend Matsunobu is concluding, I firmly believe that the Seicho-No-Ie movement, which holds to the teaching that man is a child of God, and to absolute faith in God, which expresses our true mind, and will progress powerfully in both the United States and Japan through its participation, is indispensable for the realization of world peace. I sincerely pray that God's blessings shower upon each and every one of you. And this is the end. And this is the key to solve all problems is found in mental peace. And this is found in the Open the Doors of Your Life, Volume 3, page 179. The key to solve all problems is found in mental peace. All problems and people related to your troubles are blessed existences, providing you with material to polish your soul. It's best that we first practice Shin-Sokan for them and express our gratitude. When we're grateful to all things and all people, we acquire the mental peace that brings the solution to all problems. And then a second part to this is from the 365 Golden Keys to the Secret of Life. How to go to the heart of the problem. And here it says, when something bad appears in front of you, is it sufficient to think such bad things do not exist and not take any countermeasures? Whatever, and instead simply close your eyes to the phenomenon and do nothing about it at all. In the Holy Sutra Nectarian Shower of Holy Doctrines, you're taught that you should confront the temporary form with the true image. See the perfect harmonious within that form. Confront darkness with light. The Holy Sutra does not say that you must not take countermeasures. In fact, it states that you are to take countermeasures. If you come to face with a dangerous situation in the phenomenal world, believing that it really exists, that it's a true existence, you will inevitably experience fear, insecurity, etc., and your mind will waver and weaken. Consequently, you'll be more apt to make a mistake in dealing with a situation. On the contrary, if you knew that the dangerous situation confronting you is not real, but merely reflection of the mind, your mind will never waver. If your mind remains calm, knowing that the seemingly dangerous situation confronting you is nothing but a projection on a three-dimensional screen, having length, width, and depth, somewhat like a movie screen, you can do something about it. If you do not like what you see on the screen, you can stop the projector, change the reels, etc., and do whatever is most appropriate to resolve the situation. In other words, there's a vast difference in the type of countermeasures you take, depending on whether you treat the dangerous situation as true existence or treat it merely as a reflection of your mind. In this way, you can go to the heart of the problem and know what exactly must be done to resolve the problem. That is, what areas of the phenomenal situation must be removed or corrected in order to stop or change further unwanted phenomenal development of the problem. In other words, this is a way any temporary situation is resolved when the wisdom of the true image is brought to bear on the undesirable situation. And that is the end. Thank you very much.